and I had 1,200 work orders unaccounted for.
Wow.
300 work orders in one day. We got them to like 30 something in a single day.
Yeah.
We're not even attempting to resolve the maintenance shortages.
I remember several years ago, a maintenance supervisor might make $35,000 to $45,000. I've got maintenance supervisors making $65,000.
I know for a fact that most people I told to, they're expressing 80 to 90% turnover.
A lot of times they're changing jobs because they have a bad boss, they hate the company they're working at for whatever reason, or someone else is poaching them because they're willing to pay more.
Like we're swamped. Okay, well, let's talk about some numbers, right? How many tickets you have pending, how many you complete a day, and when you start asking those questions, like most teams don't know the answer to that. So I said, well, that's your first problem right there. You don't know the answer to this, like you don't know what you have going on. How could we improve something that we can we don't measure? So that's the main challenge. Huge opportunities. Also, there's things that come in place. Is it technology? Is it how you select your vendors? Is it procurement? There's just so many details.
So I'd like to unpack the idea behind the KPIs for maintenance, because I was looking at Entrata, and the number of reports for leasing is 50 or 60 reports for leasing, and the number of reports for maintenance is like 6. So I was just curious, in your mind, what are the actual KPIs?
Well,
you want to get over
the most basic one will be pending work orders, right?
Just the total number.
Exactly, the total number.
Okay.
And because in your mind it's always, hey, how can I get to all the residents the quickest I could get? And ideally,
get all the way over that lane.
Ideally, every day I want to close on 0 work orders, right? That's just ideal.
That's the ideal, yeah. But
the ideal.
It's hard for that to happen consistently.
With a good system in place, I've learned that you could actually get there. I had this property, 2 properties that were actually together in Duluth, 843 units combined. It took me about 18 months. I went through probably 2 rounds of stuff in a process. But once I got the right team in place, we had weeks when we hit 0 work orders at closing once or twice a week regularly. And so many weeks we left on Friday with minimum, sometimes 0. We were able to build this process in, but it's very challenging, right? If you're not very organized, and especially for 843 units, it's very hard. So
I think the age of the apartment complex and the capital condition of the apartment complex. So I see apartments that are bought, and I saw you write an article about this, and I talked about the string.
Yeah.
And the issue is, if you have a property that has 1,000 work orders outstanding, and you throw a bunch of resources at it, until you get it normalized, that team will always be behind. And a lot of properties, the maintenance guy goes, he's sick, or they need to hire some replacement, and it just builds and builds, and then you get the summertime, and it's even worse with HVACs and stuff like that. So that was always my thing, is making sure the team, because I buy distressed apartments, so a lot of times there's 100, and by the way, a lot of times the residents don't even call the office. They're just so frustrated.
Or maybe they just gave up on your team, on the team.
That's right.
Because they keep calling, and nobody shows up. They're like, I'm not calling anymore.
Yeah.
Now, once they start seeing movement, and they start seeing that people respond, and then things are getting fixed, then the next thing that you're gonna see is you'll be flooded, because people start gaining their confidence back, and they're saying, okay, we're going to call in now, because it seems like they got their stuff together, we're able to get service. But back to your point, when you have a situation with a distressed property, what I've done, if obviously resources are there, I set up a cleanup team, I should say, right? And it wasn't necessary there were people that were doing this all the time, but I borrowed them from sister properties. I handpick them. We set up the stage. I had a property that had, when I walked in, it was built by Post, called Rockledge here in in Marietta. And that property was 45 years old, 708 units. And I had 1,200 work orders unaccounted for.
Wow.
Not necessarily unresolved, but unaccounted for. So they brought in a young man, a intern, that went through like a stock of work orders that were completed and start calling residents. And if the resident confirmed that the work order was completed, he would just like closing them.
Yeah.
And I went through like the staff assessment and changes and everything. North 85 North.
Yeah, 85 North. Yeah.
I went through those changes, and in about 3 months, we got to a critical mass that was like 300 work orders, down to 300, with my own staff. And we couldn't get it we couldn't push any further. Whatever we try, we will kind of like, stuck there. So I asked management, I said, let's do like a, 1 day blitz. And they say, yeah, we'll do this. What do you need? So I said, okay, I need 15 people at the site. We're going to order all the parts we need. I'm gonna go through like, my pending work order and estimate what we might need to get them done.
Yeah.
Place a huge order, and then for 1 day, my technicians will become supervisors, each one of them.
Yeah.
And for each one of my technicians, I will have 4 or 5 guys from outside. They'll come in to help. I'm gonna have them assigned to that technician, and he will coordinate. All they do, my team for that day, they will just coordinate and be there to help. They're not gonna do any work. They'll just be the supervisor, the resource. So we did that. We cleaned up from like 200, 300 work orders in 1 day. We got them to like 30 something in a single day.
Yeah.
And then once we got there, we got down to 0.
Okay.
The way we made an impact. So I spent there 11 months, a month short of a year. When I got there, it was like 82% occupied.
Yeah.
When I left, we were like 96 occupied. And on my last day at the job, there was 1 pending work order that was like pest control related. I even like I remember I had a flip phone at that time. I took a picture with my flip phone to remember. This is how I left this property.
Yeah.
And I'll say sadly, once I left, I heard that, whoever came in, they didn't keep up, they didn't keep this stuff up, and, work orders start going back up. But that's a common thing though. That's a very common thing. You see all this clean up. The good part about a cleanup is that when you have like someone good in place, you actually set them for success.
So what you talk about, and this is an interesting concept, you left and then it reverted back to what it was before. Because whatever you did, the person that replaced you did not continue to do what you were doing.
Yeah.
So that goes into a broken process and also probably broken leadership.
Could be a combination of both for sure.
That's right. Because they didn't keep doing what you were doing, and maybe the priorities were not there.
The team for a minute was the same team that I left, right? And I know the team was great, because without a great team, I couldn't have accomplished all of that. It was just the person not being very, very organized. Of course, probably like 3 months after I left, people started leaving too. Because the guys that I picked, they were all the same mindset that I had. We got to get stuff done. And when they were looking around and seeing that the next guy wasn't like, too serious about the business and everything, they got demotivated and they refused to stay. They just found some other things and they just moved on.
Okay, so you said KPI was the number of work orders outstanding, and that's over a period of time too. You have to look back each month and say, what's our average number of work orders outstanding? We can see the trend, if it's going to 200 or if it's 0. We can kind of get an idea of temperature, so to speak, of what's happening on the property. What other KPIs should they be looking at?
Work orders completed per technician per day.
Okay.
That's another one.
And that shows you the productivity, but then it takes judgment to know the HVAC call versus changing the light bulb out, and then So the problem with that, as a base statistics, is if one guy just simply takes all the easy work orders, does it, he looks like he's killing it, and the other guy's taking all the hard work orders, and he's like, look, you suck, you're only doing one work order a day, but those are the most difficult work orders. So how do you break up that?
That's interesting. I don't have the answer for it yet.
Yeah.
Me being in the middle of it and just managing the process, I learned that for example you have those guys that are very quick at solving like minor issues, right?
Yeah.
And for me to get the numbers down, and also the resident cert, I will hand over 10-15 tickets to that guy, and then he'll run them. By the end of the day, he'll finish a lot of tickets. And the other guys, they're like knowledgeable in HVAC and electrical and other areas, appliances. They might get 4 or 5 done each. But I knew that if I assign them to them, it's not going to be an issue. We're not going to have a callback. Everything's going to be taken care of.
Well, there's another KPI right there, is callbacks. That's a huge one. The number of callbacks you get on a particular work order.
Yes.
So someone goes out and following that as a true, because that shows you a training issue potentially, or someone's lazy or something like that.
A lot of times I think it's just training, or the lack of training really.
Yeah.
When you have the callbacks, the lack of skill, I'll say, right?
Skill deficit.
It's like people aren't skilled, and then of course when you have to like upskill them, it takes a lot of like effort, and you have to be like very intentional about it. Most of the service managers at the site, they're so overwhelmed with everything on a daily basis, they can barely find the time to train someone that's green. And then the situation doesn't really change. I was that guy too for the longest. I felt like, okay, I can't dedicate too much time like investing in this person, because while I'm spending the time with them, I get behind on like my other stuff, on scheduling, whatever stuff I had going on. It's very hard to build consistency when your turnover rates are through the roof, especially maintenance. And I'm baffled by the fact that the only stat that's available is like 38% turnover rate for maintenance at the site level. And I know for a fact that most people I told to, they're expressing 80 to 90% turnover. And the only stat that I could find, like in my research when I write stuff, this is a stat for like 5, 6, 7 years ago. Well, from a survey that NA did. So it baffles me that we don't have enough reliable information to actually make a judgment. And then the other thing that also was quite shocking to me, I was in a room with a CEO of a top 5 management company. Currently they're top 5. And we're talking about turnover rates and everything. And basically he stated that we're not even attempting to resolve the maintenance shortages, labor shortages. It's kind of like baked into our process. So basically they gave up trying to improve those numbers, retention numbers, and they just work with whatever it is. And to me that's really shocking, because like this is solvable. It's a solvable problem, but it goes back to like how does that affect the maintenance operations, the way a property operates, your KPIs, right? And when you're looking at any of these KPIs, is training, whom you have on site, the number of people that you have on site. Because if you're short staffed, it's like you might be spending so much time doing things that aren't even work order related, right? You got to do your curb appeal, you got to do your pool, you got to pick up trash, you got to do. So that reflects right into your work order numbers. So you're right. There's so much that goes into like how these numbers come to life. What are they made out of?
Yeah. Now I've seen several of your posts about the shortages, and what occurs to me is it's a supply and demand. When the pricing, in other words, when a maintenance supervisor, I remember several years ago, a maintenance supervisor might make $35,000 to $45,000. I've got maintenance supervisors making $65,000. So the pricing for the supervisors and the bonus incentives go way up. So I think inevitably what will happen is there's a skills shortage, you pay more, guess what? You get more people. And if you pay better, you keep those people. And when
100%.
when I hear these retention problems, I think you have a cultural problem, because most people don't want to change jobs that much. And they're not changing, a lot of times they're changing jobs because they have a bad boss, they hate the company they're working at for whatever reason, or someone else is poaching them because they're willing to pay more. And we all know in the maintenance area, every summer, who comes calling for the maintenance techs? HVAC companies. They get them in, they work for, make a lot of money for a short period of time, and then they let them go. And we see this inevitable shortage, and it's always hits as well. Like when it starts getting hot out, we're going to get a surge of work orders related to HVAC. Now, if they're doing their preventive maintenance and they're on top of it, we would hope it would be less, but we know it's coming. So I find that interesting. And then the other thing I would point out, if you're a maintenance supervisor, and I just try to put myself in their shoes, and I always say when I go to a property, I'm trying to remove barriers for the maintenance team and the manager. Do they have enough money to do the job? So how do we make our budgets? Okay, most budgets are not zero-based budgeting. It's simply, what did we spend last year? Let's add a little bit of money to it. Boom, we're done. Let's move on to the next one.
That's what everybody does.
Yeah.
How much did we spend? And like a small percentage on top of that for like prices going up and everything. But yeah, there's no like deeper drilling into.
Yeah.
Imagine the shock most owners have this year with a change of refrigerant, because that's not reflected in price.
Not at all.
It's like if you don't know that and you're not factoring in, you only based it on last year expenses without factoring this entire systemic change.
Yeah.
You're gonna be in for a sticker shock.
Without a doubt. Yeah, AC cost continues to go up, and then a lot of people think that they can just simply replace the refrigerant or replace the coils, but now you have to replace the entire system, including line sets, and that is a much more expensive than just taking a piece of it. So it's we're talking. I just recently did this. I think it's $6,000 to $8,000 depending on the tonnage of the AC, and also where the lines are and how easy it is to access the lines. And then you have to factor on any sheetrock repair or any repair work that needs to be done on that as well.
You mentioned the culture when it comes to what's generating like the this crisis that we are and like the shortage. And I wanted to say that there's obviously other factors to consider. In a world today, there's a shortage of resources for people that are blue collar, typically. More and more people live paycheck to paycheck. So what this does is that it forces them out of their comfort zone so they could find more money, so they could make a living. It's incredible what's happening to middle class and lower middle class. So money is becoming more and more of a factor out of necessities, not out of greed or whatever. And I think a lot of times it's being kind of downplayed. I've seen it in conversations saying that as good as I would treat an employee, like if they're not making enough money, they're not going to be happy. Because if I'm coming to work every day and I'm worried about having to make a choice between putting gas in a car and feeding my putting food on a table, buying food, groceries, it's a very difficult choice to make. And no matter how you kind of slice it, it's not gonna be a winner. So that person being under all this pressure to provide for the family, and then at the same time, hey, do I have a reliable car? Is there enough gas in a car and everything? They're not gonna give 100%.
Yeah.
They're always gonna have this stress and this weight on their shoulders, and this affects job performance and everything, right? So pay, I think it's becoming a very important one. And then, like you said, tools to do the job. People that are proud maintenance guys, they want to be there, they want to be useful. And I've seen people just walking off the properties that didn't have money, didn't have budget to buy parts.
Yeah.
They're not made to sit around and just with their just waiting. They'd rather just walk out, find another job, go somewhere else where they could get what they need to fix the things that they need to be fixing.
So you talking earlier about organization and about time management and making the time to train, and that is in of itself training. And then you also brought up the concept of the lack of training in the maintenance space. By the way, it also exists in the property manager level as well. Most training that I've seen is watch this video. Here's a series of videos, watch these videos. Okay, you got it, let's go. And they throw you in the deep end. And that's not truly training to me. That's showing somebody something, but actual training involves someone coming out and showing them. And here's the most important thing, and I've said this before, testing. Training without testing is worthless, and I maintain it. You show me a retention rate where you watch 20 videos, or you watch 20 videos and I test you on every video, and then I record it, and then I test you again later on. You tell me where the recall is going to be.
This is a terrible way to pretend that you could actually teach people anything this way. I've been saying this now for a while, that the current learning management systems don't teach you anything, because they don't. It's more of a transferable liability from the company to the employee, to where if there's a situation, a lawsuit, the company could pull records and say, we did everything we could, but we train our people on preventing sexual harassment, on fair housing, on electricity, whatever the issue might be.
Yeah,
it's kind of like discover your back situation. Yeah. They're pulling the records. Well, in reality, it's not how people learn. Just sitting in front of a screen, trying to memorize just enough information to pass a test, so they forget it the very next minute.
Yeah,
that's what it is. They don't retain anything. To me, in today's age, learning must be conversational.
I've been asked, but I know it's real. You're working and you're mid-level, you're a maintenance director, and you're having to deal with political infighting and the politics of large companies, and you've worked at large companies.
Yes.
What would you advise them?
I think the maintenance director job is one that's it could be a very tough one, and here's why. We're not in charge of budgets per se, typically. If you're just running operations, if you're not in charge with capital projects side of the business, just with the operation side, you're basically expected to make the teams perform while the teams are not reporting to you. It's one thing.
That's right.
So you actually have to persuade people to listen to you and kind of like follow your advice, but you can directly like discipline them or like address them in a disciplinary way.
Or incentivize them in a special
or
way.
incentivize them too, right? So you don't have those tools. And also, you're not in charge on their budgets. You don't have control how they spend the money, right? If the money is being spent, the money is being spent. You only brought in when there's a situation, a regional manager is outraged. Hey, we replaced 20 ACs last month. Tell me what's going on. So it's always reactive, right? And you always seen as like maybe the person that's responsible for it, not doing your job, when in reality you don't have this. Like, and you also a lot of times you don't even have the bandwidth. Like if you're a maintenance director that you oversee 20, 30, I even heard of directors that manage 100 properties. How is that possible? Oversee 100 properties. You would never do any type of quality work. You will always just be around putting out fires and not making a big of a difference. The way you're gonna be successful and you're gonna have like less frustration and stress is like by understanding what their goals are and try to meet those goals. Like try to come somewhere in the middle. Try to see where your goals and their goals are overlapping and how do you create like a bigger overlap. And I think that's being accomplished through conversations and understanding, right? Without necessarily making assumptions. Everybody has an agenda, and a lot of times it's just how things happen in their, in their work that you might not be exposed to, and then assuming is never the way. You just have to ask the question. The worst thing that you could do for yourself is to make assumption on how someone operates or feels or what their agenda is. The best thing is to just ask for a sit down and understand and take notes and say, I want to understand what you're up against. How can we team up together? Because again, it goes back to what I was saying earlier. You're not like direct supervisor for the maintenance site teams. So you got to find a way to like get their buy-in you're more of a trusted advisor. But you're not just a trusted advisor, you're a trusted advisor that's being held responsible for people that you don't manage and for their performance. So it's, you know, it's a sticky thing.
So it sounds like the people skills part of this is such a critical component, especially if you want to advance. Like learning how to be good with people is a critical part. And you obviously learned that. How did you know how to become good with people, Adrian? Was there some training you took? Was there some books that you read, or was it just through trial and error and figuring it out?
I've actually learned the hard way. I was terrible with people. A couple of things that I didn't, you know, initially pay attention to. First of all, I just thought that, you know, only because I work hard, everybody else is going to. Only because I push myself to the limits, everybody else must. And that was a mistake. Not everybody could be like you, right? Or don't have the same goals or the same drive.
Yeah.
And then you have to understand, right? And there's probably like very few people that have that. And then if you're going to be trying to make a team made out of like mini yous, it's going to create a lot of pain for yourself. And it's also counterproductive. Even if you have like high achievers you're surrounded by, somebody's gonna have to do like, you know, work that, you know, none of those high achievers wants to do. So how are you gonna structure a team with, you know, people that want to do the same things that you do, and who's gonna do the things you don't want to do?
Yeah.
So then you have to think about it in a complementary way, right? A team, if it's large enough, is gonna have, obviously you're going to have some A players, but then also you're gonna need a good number of B players and even C players, like people that, you know, for the, you know, very basic tasks like that are repetitive, and then most, you know, A and B players, you know, don't really care to do. You could bring, you know, some C players to take on those. They might be happy to just do it. They might not want to, you know, achieve or move up in organization. And back to the people skills is, I was terrible with this. I had a temper too. I didn't. Sometimes I address, you know, my employees like in a public setting, which was completely wrong of me to do, and I had a lot of setbacks, and, you know, some people actually just pointed out to me, and it took me a while to realize that they were right, and I gotta change the way I approach my team, the way I carry myself, the way I speak, the way I feel about things, and that's what things started improving. So that was another thing was something that I say it's cultural. I heard this from one person at one time, saying that people talk about you saying that, you know, you never smile. And initially my reaction was like, what's so much to smile about? And then I just realized that I'm coming from a culture where, you know, people are not necessarily, I guess, you know, very outgoing or like cheerful or, you know, positive. And it doesn't really match. It doesn't match well with, you know, with the current culture, the one that I'm living in. So I gotta make adjustments and, you know, be more, you know, more mellow, more amiable, and then friendlier, to come across as more friendlier. So I had to make those adjustments in order for me to become more successful. Because you're not creating a proper environment for your team, and things are not gonna go the right way for you.